Oh, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, helping you learn and grow more about real estate, investing, how to buy your first property, what the market's going to be doing. It's all going to be a fun episode in here. Today, we're going to be talking about the home buying process and kind of your first time home buyer, what to look for, what expectations you should have of your realtor, title company, lenders, inspections, appraisals, lots going into there, especially what's happening in today's market as far as the strategies that realtors are using to try to get you to save some money, but also win the house at the same time. So get ready for this episode, jump in, take some notes, and reach out to me if you have any questions. All things real estate, where we dive into how to manage real estate processes, get tips on building an investment profile, create space for how to build a passive income, and most of all, how to navigate all things real estate. Here is your host, JennyProRealtor, who went from being a single mom to building an empire with over $1 million in assets in real estate. She is our expert, a twin plus one mom, and relates to the average income holder to how to build their empire and grow wealth in real estate. Well, hello guys. I'm sitting here in my home office. It's like the only clean space in my whole house. To make this video, I'm looking out the window, which is a beautiful view of the fresh fallen snow. So this is my setting today. And so I'm wearing a sweater. I'm all comfy in my home and excited to talk to you about the home buying process. If you're a first-time home buyer, this is going to be really beneficial to you. If you're just looking to know what's to expect, if you should jump into the market, if you should sell, if you should buy, this is also going to be a great episode for you. So the buying process. I have been in real estate for over 7 years. I have done over probably, what would you say, $40 million worth of transactions, probably more, but I haven't done the math because I'm not one of those people who I have to, toot my horn, but I just want to let you know I have the knowledge. So here we go. Let's look into the forecasting of 2023. Things are all over the maps. We are expected to see interest rates do rise, but we have seen a flat line of them going up and down, just tiny, tiny bits here and there. It's going to match the inflation as far as we can, so we can capture the inflation. Other areas of the economy is starting to feel inflation. I feel like real estate was the first one to feel COVID. Real estate is the first one to feel inflation. And now other places are starting to feel it as well. Jobs, obviously groceries, obviously gas, going to make a big difference as far as, are there eggs on the shelf? Which is a big one right now, right? I feel like we did the toilet paper, we did the baby formula, we've done it all. And now we're doing eggs, which is just so crazy because it used to be something like, oh, let's eat eggs. It's a cheap breakfast. Now it's like, let's save our eggs. So that's kind of how I'm feeling nowadays. But should we save our money or should we jump into real estate as far as moving forward in 2023? If you are a first-time home buyer, I'll briefly go over some of the processes here and then kind of jump into what are the pros and cons of buying in 2023. One thing to know about is realtors do get a bad rap, but let me talk about why they get a bad rap and why you should be paying attention to who you're going to be hiring in real estate. If you're listening to this, hopefully you're going to be hiring me. I would not recommend doing things on your own. There's a reason why we have real estate agents and they're going to save you a lot of money. I have a lot of people who approach me and say, oh, but our offer is going to be stronger going forward because they're not going to have to pay for the realtor. It's going to save us $15,000, $20,000. The answer to that is hard to explain because they don't understand what a realtor could do to save you money. And statistically, realtors end up saving you. Basically, they pay for themselves by making them work for you. And there's a lot of strategy. So when I have someone come to me and they say, we don't want to hire a realtor because we're going to save money on the transaction side, I look at them and I say, well, have you strategized why you think the realtor on the seller on the other end would want to work with you without a realtor? Because the majority of the time when I'm the listing agent, I do not want to work with someone who's not represented because there comes a legal pursuit. Then who am I going to go after? They don't know what's going on. They don't know the process. I want to make sure I have my ducks in a row for the best interest of my sellers. Second of all, the strategies that realtors can bring forth in representing a buyer. as far as buying 2-for-1 to buy down interest rates, buying a full percentage interest rate down, negotiating what needs to happen with inspections, negotiating even the offer, the price, the appraisal, when the closing is going to happen, letting go of a lot of the emotions because we're the neutral ground. There's a lot of reasons to hire a realtor, so we are worth it. There are a lot of saturated realtors, which is what makes realtors have a bad rap. A lot of people thought that when the market was going really, really well, that it would be a good opportunity to jump into the market and make a buck or two. I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Jenny, how's real estate going? I want to become an agent. What are the pros and cons?" And I had to caution them by saying, this is a full-time job. And there's a lot on the line when it comes to yourself and your legality of who you represent and what you're doing. So you got to make sure that you're paying attention to how things are processing. Not only that, there's a lot of money that comes into this. So when people say that realtors are just making a big and a buck, I mean, I know you've heard that we have to pay our brokers, but we also have to market your house. We've also paid for our skill sets, and you're paying for a service. So when you go get a massage, it's going to be expensive, but you walk away empty handed because you feel like you didn't buy a product. That's because you're buying a service. You're buying my expertise. So a lot of those realtors out there that are just jumping in the market, statistically, a realtor only stays a realtor for about 2 years, and over 90% of realtors jump out of the market because they realize how difficult this process is. So you want to find somebody who's been in the market for a while and kind of has the experience of knowing what they're doing. Now, don't get on me. I was that first-time realtor. I'm so grateful for my clients that hired me in the beginning. It's up to you what you want to do. Looking back now of all the problems, the hiccups and things that I could run into, I definitely want to hire someone who has the knowledge that I have nowadays to be able to process through this, because there's a lot of money on the line. So walking into 2023, is it a good time to buy and to sell your house? Honestly, we're seeing a lot of houses on the market. A lot of people are seeing that as oversaturated. Well, we are in the winter of Utah. But to be honest with you, seeing that number makes me realize that people are becoming more confident in selling their houses and being able to move forward. Now, I used to have a lot more power as a seller's agent, but now I have more power as a buying agent, which is a great opportunity for you if you want to jump in as a first-time home buyer. Now, as a seller, there's still a lot of equity to be made. If you want to talk statistically of this, the average home appreciates about 12% every year. And last year they appreciated around the same number. The problem is the year prior to that, they appreciated like 26%. So it more than doubled what the appreciation normally would be. But we're trying to flatline here, you guys. So you still have a lot of equity that you could move towards to another house. And in my other episodes, I've talked about examples with my clients as far as being able to move up to a better home and expend more money. Do I have the money to do that when I'm trying to sell a house? I always say the numbers can talk more than I can. So let's sit down, let's talk, let's go over the numbers and see if it's a good time for you to sell your house and try to buy a bigger house, and or downsizing. Perfect time to downsize, if you ask me. So strategies is there's a lot happening on the buying end as far as trying to buy down the rates. A lot of people are buying into this 2-for-1 buy down. If it's all you can afford, which is about $10,000 to $12,000, depending on where the market's at interest rate wise, then that's what you do. A 2-for-1 buy down is basically saying you're going to buy the rate 2 points lower than the current rate today. So if it was at 6%, you're going to buy down the rate to 4%. But here's a couple of hiccups here. You have to qualify for that house at the 6% rate. So basically you're asking the sellers to pay for your interest on that home for the first 2 years of you living there. Because after the 2 years, you go back to that 6% rate and you have to stay at that rate for the life of the loan. Now, this is nice and easy if you feel like you want to save a buck or two for the first 2 years. But if you're going to buy down a rate, I would literally just buy down a rate, buy a whole percentage rate down. It's going to cost you about $20,000, which is double what it would do for the 2-for-1. But if you look at the long-term numbers and how much money you're going to save over the life of the loan versus a 2-for-1 buy down, totally worth it. You're asking the sellers to buy down the interest rate of that property by a whole percent. Now you ask for this money through concessions. This is a strategy that realtors are using across the board, offering, you'll see it in the listings, offering a 2-for-1 buy down, offering to pay for interest rates buy down. Lots of strategies happening out there. Now, because there's a way to lock in your rate once you get under contract, and then if the interest rates get lower, you can lock it in lower and lower and lower and lower. The thing is, here is the average person, if you want to look at like a 6.5% interest rate on a house, you're looking over $3,000 on a house that costs $480,000. So do your math and seeing if it really is a buyer's market. It's really not a buyer's market, but buyers do have more leverage to be able to negotiate and get what they want. Whereas it was in spring of 2022, you were basically offering your first child. You were saying that you were going to waive the appraisal. You were going to waive the inspection. I mean, that you were going to give price above appraised value. There was a lot of crazy things happening in springtime. So I'm really excited to jump into this market as far as leveling it out and getting the worth out of the homes. Now, that doesn't mean that if you bought in springtime that you're in a sucky situation. I'm just saying I'm excited to be out of the rat race. So let's say you decide to go forward with a house that you found, which is a lot slower process nowadays. You have time to think about it. You have time to go see a couple houses. You have time to sleep on an offer, which is really nice because it's a big purchase that you're making. And you decide to put an offer on a house, you get under contract. Well, then we have what's called an escrow process. The escrow process is going to start the instigation as far as trying to purchase the home. You have a due diligence deadline. You have a seller's disclosures deadline. You have an inspection deadline. You have a financing appraisal deadline, and you have a settlement deadline. These 5 dates are the things that us as realtors are really going to be focusing on, because there's certain things that need to happen before these dates come. Seller's disclosures, the sellers are just going to disclose everything that they know about the property. Okay, you're going to look at that document. You're going to inquire any more information that you might have. There's an HOA. If there's any fees due under the HOA, if there's any transfer fees, if there's reconveyance fees, that's the wrong name. Can't think of the name. Association fees, basically, from the HOA. And then once that's done, you're going to approve it, sign it. Then you go to the due diligence phase. Okay, due diligence is your due diligence to be able to see if you like the property, if you like the neighborhood, if you like the location, if you like the title report. All that stuff's going to happen before this deadline, and it's usually about 2 weeks into the under contract, which is what we call escrow process. So you usually would hire an inspector during this time. And I would always give referrals, but it's up to you on who you want to hire for your inspection. The inspector's an out-of-pocket expense, meaning that you need to pay for this outside of the transaction, which is typically around $300 to $500, depending on the square footage of the house, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, because it's going to take time for the inspector to turn on all the faucets, inspect all the lights, all the outlets, and see what they can see as far as doorknobs, windows. They're literally inspecting everything that they can see. Things that they can't see, maybe mold behind the walls, or maybe there's a problem with the roofing. They will not get on the roof if there's snow, because there's hazards, which is a lot of reasons why people don't buy in the winter. Plus, people don't want to move during the snow. But I think it's also a great time because as you have more leverage as a buyer to get more cash in your pocket when buying a house. So as the inspector comes, it's really important to pay attention to that inspection report and looking for, like, is there a problem with the windows? Is there a problem with the ceiling of the windows? Is there a problem with the doors? Or there's a gutters? Is there a problem maybe with where the water and the gradient of the house is coming from? Is there an issue with the plumbing? Is there an issue with some electrical? Has the electrical been done by a professional, or has this been a hack job? You also have an opportunity to do a radon test. Radon test tests the soil and the chemicals coming out of the soil and the ground. That is something that is a hazard. So if the radon levels come up high, then that's something the sellers are going to need to fix, which is usually installing a mitigation system. So a lot of things are to go forth. But here's the thing. When you put in an offer, if you want any cosmetic things done to the property, whether it's a paint or whether it's you want the furniture included, whether the flooring needs to be replaced, the carpet allowance, whatever it may be, new appliances, you need to ask for that in your original offer. When it comes to safety hazards is when we're looking at the due diligence phase. So any safety hazards is what you're going to pay attention to in the inspection report. So let's say they don't have a railing for more than 3 steps. Well, that's something that's a safety hazard. Let's say that the water heater is not working properly. That's a safety hazard. Let's say that your roof has some issues and could be leaking because it's got 3 layers of shingles and it's looking old, it needs to be replaced. Reason why I say 3 shingles is because legally you cannot have more than 3 layers of shingles on your roof. Yes, I know people actually put shingles on top of shingles to fix a problem because the majority of the expense from replacing a roof is taking off the shingles. It's about 50% of the job. So realtors, we know this stuff. We're not professionals, but we can give you tips and advice and saying, look, this is what you need to focus on here. Obviously, the plumbing has some issues. There's a drip, there's a leak. Looks like there's some water damage. Looks like there's, they redid the bathroom upstairs. You can see the patchwork. We need more information on that. Realtors are going to guide you through that process, especially as a first-time home buyer. That's something that's not typically known. The third thing is the appraisal, the financing and appraisal deadline, which means your loan is going to go into what is called a closing disclosure before this deadline, hopefully. Which is a 3-day process legally to make sure that your credit doesn't spike, you don't lose your job, and the numbers still stay the same for 3-day grace day. So your lender is someone you're going to be working highly with as far as getting all the documents in place. Lots of documents. For me, I'm a 1099, so I have a ton of documents I have to submit when I'm buying a house. But if you're a 1049, which is a W-2 employee, then there's probably not going to be too many documents, especially if you haven't changed your job in the last 2 years. A lot of knowledge, as you can see here from my experience, to know in and out and what to expect and how to navigate through this process. But there is going to be needed a professional appraisal, which needs to happen to make sure that the value that you gave the property is supported by the neighborhood around them and the marketplace. Now, an appraisal, this is where 2008 went wrong. They had the lender and the appraisal were communicating to each other. And a lot of times they would give the benefit of the doubt of the agent working with them, whether they wanted the price to be lower or higher and not looking at the market value. Well, since 2008, we've cut off that communication between the appraiser and the lender. The lender doesn't know who the appraiser is going to be. I don't know who the appraiser is going to be. Majority of the time, you don't even talk to the appraiser. If an agent is trying to combat what happened with the appraisal, that's my process to know how to navigate through that and communicate with the appraiser and say, look, here's some other comparing homes, some other comparing comps, the reason why I think this price needs to be this way. The appraiser, we're going to go in, he's going to measure, he's going to look at the market, he's going to compare, and he's going to give the home a price value. Now, if the price value is lower than the original offer, there needs to be a price adjustment here, which is why in springtime, a lot of people were giving price above appraised value because the market was going up so fast that appraisers couldn't give the market value because the demand was so high, where it's, Joe, the next door neighbor, sold his house for $550, but I'm under contract for $625 here. Well, that's a huge jump here, and your appraiser doesn't have the room to justify it, but I do as a buyer because there's a high demand and I'm trying to be competitive. Therefore, I'm going to give cash above that appraised value. That's where that came from, and trying to get the most cash into the seller's pockets in springtime. But nowadays, if the appraiser comes in lower, the seller majority of the time is going to have to lower their price because the argument is that you're not going to get anything higher than this. The demand is just not out there. The appraiser is going to be able to see the other appraisers' values. The values of their homes are not going to change. And so typically there's some negotiations that need to happen between me and the other realtor about lowering that price. The closing deadline is the 5th one, the last one that you need to be paid. I think that was 5, right? I can't remember how many numbers I was counting, but the last one is a financing and settlement deadline. Now, so this is a time where you're going to come to the table and you're going to sign your documents as the buyer because you have a loan. You need wet signatures, and so the title company is going to be working on the back end, making sure all the numbers are lined up as far as taxes are concerned, about your insurance, any of the HOA, any property taxes. This is all included in your mortgage. So let me make that very clear. Your HOA is not included in the monthly mortgage that is paid to the HOA, but it is accounted for on the settlement, that you know what that's going to look like. Then there is the insurance. That is the house insurance. The loan requires that you insure the property. So majority of the time, the lender is going to find a cheap insurance company for you. If you want to find your own private insurance, you're more than welcome to do that. You just need to communicate with your lender. Then the property taxes are also included. Please note the property taxes are included in this monthly mortgage. Do not go pay your property taxes a second time. And then you have your principal, you have the ROI, which is the insurance on the mortgage unless you paid 20% down or have a different type of loan, plus then the monthly payment. So that's all included in your monthly payment when it comes down to escrow. So you want to pay attention to that number to making sure you're happy with that number and moving forward, because you're going to be paying it every month. Once you have settled and signed, then you have to wait for the funds to happen, which is closing and settlement date. Settlement and closing. The closing is defined by the funds being approved. Now, there's a lot of wire fraud going out there. So make sure, and this is what my job is as well, you get the proper information from the title company as far as wiring the money that you need to bring to the table. This is your closing costs. This is your down payment. Any other title fees, any other realtor fees is all going to go into this, which is, as a buyer, you don't pay realtor fees. But if you're a seller, you also have to pay attention to that as well. So once you go to the table, make sure you do your wire properly. Listen to the title company. The title company can be picked by you. I also have referrals for that. Just lots of reasons, as you can see, why you'd want to hire an agent. My best advice on if you should buy or sell this year. If you need to buy and sell, then you need to buy and sell this year. The best time to buy and sell a property is when it makes sense and it feels right for you. Do not try to play with the market this year. Do not try to navigate to when the best time is to buy. We are all over the place. We are technically in the definition of a recession. So this might be a really good time for buyers to jump in if you can afford it. Does not mean it's in your in your weight as far as saving a buck or two. You may save in the purchase price of the house, but there is higher interest rates. So it's not really a buyer's market, and it's not really a seller's market right now. It's just, if it's a market for you and it makes sense for you, then let's do it. Let's sit down, talk about the numbers and kind of go everything. But this is why I think you should buy in 2023 if it makes sense. So let's sit down. Let's talk about those numbers. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you guys next time.